All right. Hello, folks. This is gonna be another LXD release live stream. So that's for LXD 5.8. I'm Stefan Graeber, I'm project leader for LXD. And yeah, this is another new LXD release we put out last week. And well, first of all, I'm hoping the video and everything set up is functional. This is just temporary spot at my new place, and I think I got everything behaving with the new version of OBS, but yeah, no guarantee. So hopefully it's all good. Anyway, this is LXD 5.8. It's not our busiest release, partly because a lot of, well, the entire LXD team really has been traveling to Prague a few weeks ago. Some of us for 2 weeks, the rest for just 1 week. And so we spent some time face to face to work on our planning for the next few months, as well as just catching up. So that means a few less features managed to make it in, but we still have a few pretty exciting stuff on there. So looking at the announcement here, the first release, the first feature that made it in this release is support for CPU hotplug. That's something that we wanted to have for a while for CPUs inside virtual machines specifically, because it was a bit of a gap we had compared to containers. With containers, we can easily add or remove CPUs, and that just applies live. For virtual machines, a bit trickier because we're dealing with a virtual machine, so CPUs don't usually come in and out quite as easily. But it turns out with a bit of work with QEMU, it's possible to get this working pretty well. And so I'll show how that's all behaving now. The one interesting limitation to it is that it doesn't quite work on all architectures. There's some architectures where CPU hotplug at issue QEMU, it doesn't work. But yeah, it works for Intel, which is what most people care about. And by Intel, I mean Intel and AMD, so x86 effectively. And it also works on some of the more specialized architectures like S390X. All right. The other feature that's been requested quite a few times, and we finally got around to implementing it, is support for overriding a specific device configuration at launch or creation time inside of LXD. That effectively avoids having to change those config keys after the fact or having to create intermediate profiles. Makes it pretty easy to just override something pretty simple, as is in the example here. I'm just overriding the size of a particular container. And the last feature that's been added in this LXD release is support for tracking of creation date on volumes. This feels like a very tiny feature, and it is, but it's quite useful when combined with the migration and refresh logic that we have, because that makes it quite a bit better for us to keep track of what has been transferred and what hasn't, and giving us better ability to refresh volumes. All right, so let's just go over those again, but this time with a demo. So let me just switch over the screen. There we go. And just clean up that screen there. All right, so the first thing is the CPU hot plug inside of virtual machines. So for that, we're gonna start. So I just have an empty LXD 5.8 here. Let's launch a virtual machine. So we'll do an Ubuntu cloud image, call it v1 as a VM. Okay, I'm gonna give that a few seconds to boot up and see what we have. It doesn't have any particular config through profiles or anything. So if we look at the expanded config for this one, we can see there's nothing weird. It's just attached to a demo BR0 bridge, default root disk, nothing weird. It does have apparently a memory limit that's coming through the profile. I'm not sure why that is. I can actually clear that. Okay, so that's gone. And if we go inside of it, CPU info will show a single CPU, LS CPU. Also shows single CPU pass-through of the host system, so it shows my AMD Ryzen here. And where's the online tracking of those CPUs? CPU here, yeah. So one CPU is available, it's CPU 0, and CPU 0 is online. All right. So now my host system has it's an 8 core 16 threads. Is that right? Yeah, 8 core 16 threads. So LXD will let you hot plug up till those 16 cores effectively. So let's just do v1 CPU and say we want 6. Okay, so that got set. And now if we go back inside the VM, the first thing you notice if you look at CPU info, it still shows a single CPU. But if you go look at LS CPU, notice a bit of a difference here. Now it shows total CPU is 6, online 0, offline 1 through 5. That's because when you hotplug CPUs on Linux, they don't come up online, they just get added as offline CPUs. You can see them here appearing. And then you need to bring them online manually. So for that, you need echo and sys bus CPU devices. And here you're gonna have different numbers. CPU 0 is the one that's already online, so don't need to do that. We'll do CPU 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now if we look at our dmessage output, we can see the CPU is actually going online, timers and stuff like their clock being set up. And now if we look at CPU info, can see that we have up till CPU 6. And our LS CPU output now shows, now I remember what to look at. Here, CPUs, we can see that 0 through 5 are online and nothing is offline. Okay, so that works great. If we look at, I guess, the top output, we can see all the CPUs. That works perfectly fine. Now, what we can also do is reduce that. So if we say I want 2 now, and we go back here, you can see a bunch of them were removed. And if we look at CPU info, now we've got, and CPU numbering is can be a bit funny. So here we see CPU 0 and 5 are still here, the rest are gone. But the result is the same, you're down to just 2 CPUs now. So with CPU count 2, online 0 and 5. All right, and if you want to go all the way back to default, CPU 1, and now you're back to single CPU, CPU 0 is online. There you go. So that's your CPU hot plug right there. Now, let's reset this. Okay. The second feature is the ability to override config and launch. So if we look at that VM again, its root disk is the default size of 10 gigs for LXD. So it's a bit under 10 gigs because we also have the boot partition plus the partition table itself. Now, if I do that launch again, but now I do D and the device name, which is root, and the property we want to override is the size, and say we want to give it 50 gigs. Oops, so V1 is taken, so let's call it V2. Okay, so now V2 is starting up. And if we look at its configs, if we look at V1, that's what it looks like, with no local devices defined because they're all inherited through the default profile. So if we had to do dash expanded to actually see them show up here. But now if we look at V2, its root device was overridden, so it was copied from the default profile. And then the size is set here to 50 gigs. So if we go inside V2 and look at the disk, here we go, 50 gigs. And that doesn't just apply to disk, you can apply it to any device you want. So you can override network devices, could do that for TPMs, GPUs, whatever you want. You can do it through that flag. You can pass it multiple times to apply to multiple devices. All right, so last one is the storage piece. So let's just look at what we've got for volumes. Okay, don't have any in this project, so I'm just gonna create a new one, default foo. And I mean, there's not too much to it really. So if we do show on it, now there's a creation date here. So that's pretty much all that there is to it. We've added a new created at flag. That lines up with what you've got for instances as well. I don't remember if it shows up in the config, but I don't believe it does now. But if you look at an instance, we do have a creation date that's recorded. So now we've got the exact same for volumes. Existing volumes would just have a creation date set to 0, which is going to be the 1st of January 1970. That's just fine, but all new volumes will have it properly recorded, and that makes it, as I said, quite a bit easier for LXD to do some amount of tracking internally. And that's it. That is not the busiest LXD release ever, for sure. If we go back to the announcement. But one thing that's worth noting is the number of bug fixes. There's been a fair few in this release, and some of those are pretty significant. I would probably highlight some of the improvements we've done again around the database. We've been at it for a little while, and this time around, Tom on my team found some issues around the way we were looking at networks when listing very large set of instances. So if you were ever playing with like a large cluster and doing like list across all projects and listing like hundreds of thousands of instances, this is a lot faster now. Actually just tested it against my home cluster that's running a few hundred instances, and yeah, we went down from multiple seconds down to less than a second pretty much. So that's pretty good. We've been doing a lot of similar work around performance, optimization of our database queries, and general fixes behind the scenes, which really makes every LXD release quite a bit faster. It's worth noting that most of those fixes we can backport and will backport. So if you're running production LXD, stick to 5.0 LTS. Those kind of fixes will make it to you. They just take a few months before we backport them, test them, and then roll them out to users that way. All right. Well, I hope this was useful to you. If you've got any questions, you can leave them down below the video here, or you can go on the community forum and post directly, for example, in this release post here. So we've seen like a few people were quite enthusiastic about the ability to override devices on launch in this case. All right, well, thanks for watching, and have a good one. See you in the next video. Bye.